Hello and welcome to today's meeting of Democrats of Greater Tucson. Today we have Pam Powers Hannley, our Arizona State Representative here in formerly LD9, now LD18, and she is going to tell us her views about the 10 propositions that are on the ballot. She's a multi-talented person. I just saw her playing the accordion this weekend at Glow up in Oracle, and I remember first meeting her gathering signatures at the Tucson Peace Festival back in 2016. She is known as a progressive blogger and videographer on the blog for Arizona, and she has a new podcast, A View from the Left Side, which I've watched, and it's on the blog for Arizona, and I highly recommend it. And so we're hoping today that Pam will cut through all of the confusion, as she recently did with the Arizona ground game, where there was a program called Speed Dating the Propositions. And with that, Pam, go right ahead.
Well, thanks a lot, Larry, and thanks for having me, DGT. And I'm so excited to hear about your membership gain since you've been on Zoom. I remember going to the Chinese restaurant every Monday for many years, and it was fun, but I'm glad that you're reaching more people actually through technology. And so anyway, we're going to talk about the 10 propositions. Arizonans are going to have a long ballot this year, in addition to the congressional candidates and the statewide candidates and the, school board and all these other people who are on it. We have these 10 propositions, and of the 10, 8 were put on the ballot by the legislature. And Blog for Arizona for many years has said, when there's a proposition on the ballot from the legislature, you should vote no. Well, 6 of them, that's true this year, but not all 8 from the legislature. And so basically, I'm going to start with the 6 that are no votes, because these are relatively easy in my opinion. And as Larry mentioned, there was that ground game event, and all of the ground game videos are on my YouTube channel. And so you can see the whole hour-and-a-half program. And what you're getting today is like the Cliff Notes version. And on the YouTube channel, you can hear the experts talk about all these propositions too, not just me. So anyway, the first ones we're going to start with are the 3 that are proposed by the legislature that weaken the citizens' initiative. Because that's the one thing they really hate, is when people try to put something on the ballot, like raising the minimum wage. What a crazy idea is that, right? And so Prop 128 is the first one, and this one would weaken the Voter Protection Act. And so I've been in Arizona for 40 years. The Citizens Initiative was put into the Constitution by the progressives who wrote the Arizona Constitution. And so I've seen lots of citizens initiatives over the years. And there was a period where the legislature basically tried to stop all the citizens initiatives. They would be passed by the people, and then the legislature would come into session in January and say, oh, they didn't really want to do that, we'll just get rid of that. So we passed the Voter Protection Act. So Prop 128 would weaken the Voter Protection Act and also make it easier for the legislature to get rid of citizens initiatives after they've already been passed. And so no on 128. Prop 129 would require the citizens initiative to be limited to a single subject, and to have the subject of the initiative, everything about the initiative would be in the title. And so the legislature has a single subject rule. Our bills are supposed to be one subject, and the subject is supposed to be reflected in that little title that you see that's like 3 to 5 words long. And so this doesn't work for citizens initiatives, though, because for example, the courts or the Republicans could say, oh, for example, Stop Dark Money, that has to be broken up into 5 different citizens initiatives, not just one. And so you could see how Prop 129 would raise the amount of money you needed to pass an initiative significantly. So also very bad. And also, if everything has to be in the title, you're going to get really long titles. So anyway, the editor in me comes out sometimes. Prop 132 requires citizens initiatives to have a supermajority. So that would be a 2/3 majority in order to pass. Now, what that goes to the voters requires a 2/3 majority. And so a lot of citizens initiatives have been really popular, like raising the minimum wage, or the multiple times we voted to legalize marijuana. A lot of times those are passed by a big margin, but they almost never get to 2/3. So this would knock out a lot of citizens initiatives. And ironically, this passed through the legislature with a 1-vote majority because it was passed on a party line vote by the Republicans. So 132, all three of those are bad. 309 is the next one. This is also a bad bill that came through the legislature. It started out as a striker in the Government and Elections Committee by Representative Fillmore. And so you can see right off the bat, it's got a shaky beginning as a striker. And so what this is it increases the strictness of our voter identification laws in the state of Arizona. We already have some of the strictest voter identification laws, and this would make it worse. And so, you know how your ballot has like that, it has the ballot, and then you have the interior envelope, and then the exterior envelope that you mail the pebble back in with. On the interior envelope, currently you have to sign it and date it. Well, this would require you to put your birthday on it, plus your official voter ID number. And this could be your driver's license number, your official state ID, the last 4 digits of your social security, or the original voter ID card number that you got from the recorder. So first of all, this is a lot of process, right? I don't know any database that has all those numbers in it. So that means that every envelope, in addition to matching your signature, they would be matching one of all these other things with it. And so that's a lot more work. That's no more money for the recorder's office. It would slow the process down. And if you forget or screw up any of those numbers, like if you're dyslexic like me, it's really hard to make sure you get all your numbers in the right order. So you get your numbers mixed up, your ballot is gone. So that is a voter suppression. So don't believe all those cute little red, white, and blue signs that say vote yes on 309, vote no on 309. So the next one is Prop 131. This creates a office of lieutenant governor. Now, there are some people who support this, but I don't like this because this just gives the governor an easy out, right? I've been here for 40 years. I've seen 3 times the Secretary of State has taken over for the governor, and twice the party changed. And so this lieutenant governor is really a way to cement the party in power, right? Because, for example, after Katie Hobbs and Carrie Lake became the nominees in the primary, they would have nominated or appointed a lieutenant governor to run with them as a team. And so that way, if the governor decides to leave and take a job in DC or gets impeached like Ev Meekum, then the lieutenant governor takes over. And then that person runs as an incumbent, although they have never been elected really on their own. And so I think this is a bad idea. I think it opens the door for governors to leave us midterm. It also, it's more government. This was created just so the Republicans could cement their path. And so I don't think that the lieutenant governor is a good idea. Lastly, in the bad ideas from the legislature is Prop 130. Now, this one is a constitutional amendment which changes multiple property tax rates. And so it is being billed as a fix for disabled veterans. But if you ever watch my videos on my YouTube channel, this actually was a subject of one of my videos. I have a video that talks about unnecessary or duplicative bills that waste time and money. So Prop 130 is based on SCR 1011 from Senator Mesnard, and it is the subject of one of those videos because it was one of 8 bills to fix the property tax for veterans. And so we had 4 sets of 2 bills each, and the ones that finally got passed were the ones from Senator Mesnard. And so other bills were a little cleaner. And what I don't like about this is that it goes beyond veterans. And in fact, it has lots of property tax statutes that are eliminated basically. And then it says the legislature can just set the rates for these. It also includes a specific tax break for equipment owned by businesses. And so there's a lot in Prop 130, and it's not just about veterans. And I'd like to point out that this disabled veterans part of it, it's about disabled veterans who own property. So this would not help the homeless veterans who are out on the street with no legs and sitting there in a wheelchair and a sign on their laps. This is about people who own property and getting a property tax break. And one thing you'll notice is that when the legislature cuts property taxes, that hurts local services. And that leads into one of the other propositions, which you'll hear about in a few more minutes. So now we're going on to the 4 of the 10 that I'm recommending a yes vote for. And so the next one is Prop 209. And Prop 209 is the Predatory Debt Protection Act. And so this is the second citizens initiative that's been proposed by the group Healthcare Rising. You might remember a few years ago, they had one that tackled surprise billing and also had wages and healthcare for patients in it. It had a lot of things, and it did not make it onto the ballot back then. And so this particular one is much more focused. And so this looks at protecting people from medical bankruptcy, which is a very good thing. And so we found with the Affordable Care Act that many more people were brought onto health insurance, but there's still way too much medical bankruptcy. And so what Prop 209 does is it helps you protect the money that you have in your homestead and some of your other assets, so you don't lose everything when the debt collectors come after you for medical debt that you couldn't afford. The next one is Prop 211. So that's the Stop Dirty Money. And again, this is another one that's been trying to get on the ballot forever. It's finally on the ballot. I've been a proponent of Stop Dirty Money. In fact, Jim and I have been out there putting signs up on the streets for this one. And so what this does is it brings more campaign finance transparency into Arizona elections. And so as a swing state, there's millions of dollars in outside money coming to the state of Arizona to try to sway our votes. And so the independent expenditures are just very high. I noticed that particularly in the primary, and that's how we got some of the primary winners that we did. And so what this says is that the voters have the right to know if millions of dollars are being spent in the state of Arizona. We have a right to know who those big pocketed donors are. When you or I give a donation to a candidate, we have to disclose our names, our addresses, and our occupation and the amount that we gave. And I think that people who are giving thousands of dollars to sway an election for or against candidates or initiatives should also have to disclose who they are and how much they gave. And so I think Prop 211 is very good. The next one is Prop 310, and this one is a statewide transaction privilege tax increase for fire districts. And so this is the one I was referring to. So there has been tinkering by the legislature with property taxes over the last 10 years, and this has left many rural fire districts dangerously underfunded. And so what Prop 310 is, their goal is to increase response times in rural Arizona. So this is for people who live there, but also people like us in the city who travel through Arizona on the highways, or we are vacationing there and camping or whatever. And so this would help us all. And so again, they are coming to us for a sales tax essentially because the legislature tinkered with the property tax. So this is a case in point regarding Prop 130. If they tinker with all those property taxes, then that is going to starve local services. And so we really have to watch out for what they're doing up there in Phoenix, obviously. The last one that I'm going to talk about is Prop 308. And so this is in-state tuition for dreamers. And so these are people who were brought to the United States by their parents, sometimes when they were very small children. And there was an initiative passed several years ago that said that, it was basically against dreamers and said that they couldn't get in-state tuition. Non-citizens couldn't have in-state tuition. So these people are residents of the state of Arizona. They were brought here as children. They have lived here. They have never lived in the other country, whatever that was. And so this gives them in-state tuition. And I think this is a good idea. We need more workers in the state of Arizona. We need more educated workers, and a better educated workforce helps us all. And so I've had some comments on my YouTube channel about how this is not a good idea to give these people, in-state tuition, but I think a better workforce is good for everybody. So again, I urge you to check out the YouTube channel. It has the entire TAG event, but it has every speaker's piece. And so if you want to learn more about 308 or 310 or 211 or 209, I'm forgetting all the numbers. They're very good speeches by every group talking about why these initiatives are a good idea. And like I said, I'll give you more details, and what I've just given you is kind of like the highlights. And so that's all I have to say. This is an important election, obviously, to elect the right candidates, but to also be mindful of these propositions, because some of them are going to take away your rights regarding voting, and also take away your rights regarding citizens initiatives. So please educate your friends and family members politely. Don't make them angry, but we really need everybody to vote and everybody to pay attention and know what's on the ballot and be educated about the propositions and the candidates. So that's all I have to say.
Wow. Thank you for doing such a superb job, Pam. You really outlined it in bullet point fashion. And I would remind people that take a look at the DGT website, and we have Pam's viewpoints all reflected there. And I put the link in the chat. So now it's time for questions. Christina, go right ahead.
Hi, Pam. Thanks again for being here. This is really important. And my husband, Steve, and I were actually at the TAG event, and it just opened our eyes, and it really was good. So I hope anybody that has a chance can go back and to watch those videos, because all of the speakers, of course, Pam included, were really important. And then too, Pam and I've had an email exchange about 130, because if y'all notice, the Pima County Democratic Party has endorsed the Proposition 130, and Pamela has a different take on that. And I wondered if you go ahead and talk about that, your difference with what the county party is feeling about that proposition. Thank you.
Yes, I saw on their promo that they were supporting 130, and I know that there are a couple other Democratic groups, like some of them are for it and some of them are against it. I mean, if you just look at the high point, oh, we're going to help disabled veterans, you know, that's a worthy cause, right? But as I pointed out, we're not helping the poorest disabled veterans. We are helping the generals and colonels in Sierra Vista who write to me all the time, and those guys just got like a $35 million tax break on their pensions. And so it is about property tax, and it goes far beyond helping disabled veterans. And so my viewpoint on basically all of these is aligned with the Civic Engagement Beyond Voting group. And you know that they're the ones who send you those lists every week when we're in session on what to vote for and what not to vote for. And I think they said it well, is that it opens the door for the legislature to tinker with a lot of property taxes. They could have referred a bill to the ballot that was only about veterans, but this is not what that Prop 130 does.
All right, I believe we have a question from Mike Bryan. Mike, go right ahead.
I did have one elaboration, I guess I would put it, on Prop 309, which is the voter ID requirement. It not only requires you to put in a so-called voter ID number on your mail-in ballot, it also removes some options from in-person voting. So if anybody's ever worked the polls, you're going to know that being able to identify yourself through two pieces of non-photo ID is very often an important way to do it, because people, you know, haven't updated their information, they don't have it, so forth. So it gives the poll workers some flexibility to be able to actually identify that person and allow that person to vote on the day of voting. And Prop 309 takes that away. You can no longer identify yourself with non-photo ID under this proposition. You have to present only photo ID. So that's going to disenfranchise even more folks. So I just wanted to point out that additional wrinkle to give you more reason to vote for it if you needed it.
Vote against it, you mean?
Oh yeah, yeah. I didn't get much sleep last night, so vote against it, definitely. 309 against. And I wanted to get a clarification from you, Pam. Prop 132, the supermajority for initiatives initiative, well, referendum, I guess it actually is. It requires 60%, not 2/3, right?
I think that's right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And
So
also,
a few fewer percentages.
yeah. And also, I guess it's kind of a loophole because raising taxes here in Arizona due to a long ago proposition, I think it was back in the 1980s, maybe even the 70s, that you have to have a 2/3 majority in the state legislature to raise any tax revenues. And this would make it so that you have to also have a 60% vote from the voters if the state legislature referred a matter to the ballot for Arizona voters that regards a tax matter. So just that additional wrinkle to point out that I don't think was covered in Pam's presentation. I think that's all I got for now. Again, if you have any questions you'd like posed, stick it in the chat. I'll ask it for you if you don't want to.
All right, we've got Shirley Muni coming up. Go ahead, Shirley.
I've been, I don't know, Pam, if you saw the series of town halls on the ballot questions that were held by the Secretary of State's office. There were 2 back-to-back on 2 different days with a speaker on each side of the ballots. They did the 100s and 100s on one day and the 2s and 3s on the next day. I was concerned about the one on the fire district, and I changed my mind actually about that because the person speaking against it pointed out, number one, the rural, so-called rural fire districts includes any area that it's not in an incorporated city. That
Right.
includes the foothills and everybody else, and you are already paying a separate fee to the fire district in your taxes, and you are electing people to that fire district board. The people who live in the cities would have to also pay an increased sales tax, and that is the equivalent of taxation without being represented on the fire district board. And not only that, they pointed out that some of these districts are awash in equipment and so on. For example, they pointed out that in the Verde Valley area, there are like 5 different fire districts for one area. So they could easily combine that and their money and their equipment. So it seems a bit excessive. So you've got the point of taxation without representation, people already being taxed in their fire district, and the possibility of overlap of equipment.
Yeah, I think you should listen to the firefighter who did the tag presentation, because he made some very interesting points. He said that there was a bill that was passed by the legislature, I guess maybe during the Russell Pierce era, and it was when property values were down because of the Wall Street crash. The legislature passed something that property taxes can't be raised more than 5%. So after the crash, obviously, property taxes have gone up again, but they could only go up 5% per year. So he gave really good examples of some parts of the state. Again, they are unincorporated. They're unincorporated parts. Some parts of the state they are serving like hundreds more people than they used to, but their revenue has not kept up with the amount of population. Whereas if the state had not messed with the property taxes in the first place, it would be more paid for by the people who live in their area. So I see your point, but I'd say most of us, have to drive through rural Arizona. And I don't know if you heard that Representative Judy Burgess during this session, she had a severe car accident up there off of one of those small 2-lane roads outside of Superior or Globe or somewhere up there, rolled her car off the road and was unconscious in her car upside down, and she couldn't call the fire department, and a Good Samaritan found her. And that's a situation that any of us could be in. And right now the response times in rural Arizona are dismal. And yes, the legislature should do something, but they're not, just like they're not with lots of other things. But I would, your points are well taken. I don't disagree with you, but I would I would listen to what that guy had to say, because generally I would not support something like this, because it is a sales tax. But I think that it will help us all in the long run.
Right, let's turn to Susie Anderson. Susie has a question. Go right ahead, Susie.
Hi, thanks, Pam. I was wondering if you would explain for those of us who are not as politically astute as you all are about where propositions 100, 200, and 300 come from, who, creates them, etc.
You mean the number scheme?
Yes.
Yeah, so the 100s are all like constitutional amendments that are proposed by the legislature. All the ones that go through the legislature are the 100s and the 300s, and they all have to be passed by a bill. So they all got through the legislature and were referred to the ballot by the legislature. But and then the 200s are the citizens' initiatives. So the only 2 out of the 10 that were put on the ballot by people of Arizona are the Healthcare Rising and Stop Dark Money, and both of them took multiple tries to finally get where they are. So that's where it is. So the 100s and 300s are by the legislature, but the 100s are constitutional amendments, and the 300s are just other ideas that got through. And the one was the Dreamers, which was kind of surprising that passed the legislature on a bipartisan vote. And then the other one was the fire districts. But in some way, the fire districts was, oh, well, so we screwed this up. So let's, support this tax to try to fix what we messed up, 10 years ago. So it's how the legislature works, right?
I had a question for you, Pam, and that is regarding 128, the so-called Voter Protection Act.
Right.
It's completely deceiving. It's designed to trick voters, because it does nothing to protect voting. In fact, it
Right.
takes away voters' rights by saying that if the people approve an initiative, that the legislature can overturn that. And so I guess, how can the legislature get away with falsely naming these propositions? And is there any precedent anywhere in the country for the legislature just throwing out an initiative?
I think that I have heard from other legislators that this happens in their states too. But I mean, in the 90s, it seemed like one right after another. As soon as they got into session, they got rid of it. Now, this Prop 128 is misleading, because it says that the courts can, after it's approved, right? This would be after you've already voted yes on this thing and it's passed by the ballot, the courts can take a look at it and decide if it's illegal or unconstitutional. Well, that's one of the things that they try to, get the citizens initiative off the ballot in the first place. And so this is like a do-over to try to go to the courts and say, oh, this is illegal or unconstitutional. Now, that doesn't seem like a bad thing, right? Oh, if it's illegal, we don't want it. But, Ducey has packed the courts. And so, there's a lot of bad decisions coming out of the Arizona Supreme Court now, and a lot of, kind of wacky people on that court, if you look at it. So I think it's just a slippery slope. And yes, I mean, they do this all the time of, naming something with something that sounds so good, but it's not good,
All right, let's turn to Mike Bryan. Mike, go right ahead.
Carol Needhammer would like you to revisit 129 and 131. She had thought that they were suggested to be yeses. That's the single subject rule for propositions and the lieutenant governor question. So if you could just go over those for her one more time, please.
Hi, Caroline, long time no see. I know her from the 80s. Anyway, the 129 that's the single subject one. And so this is another thing that the Republicans have used to attack the citizens initiatives before they get on the ballot. And it's not all one unified subject. And so what we're concerned about with this one is that they would sort of nickel and dime the initiatives and say, oh no, this can't be one, it's got to be 5 or 4 or 3 or 10 or who knows what. And so you would end up with just an enormous amount of money and effort to try to get a collection of citizens initiatives passed rather than, one citizens initiative. And so that's the main thing that I don't like about that. It's not in the Constitution. It's been like this for what, more than 100 years. And so why do we need this now? We've had this situation for a long time. And the lieutenant governor, I mean, this was something that the Republicans have been trying to do the lieutenant governor for a long time. In fact, during the years that I've been in the legislature, they created the Department of Administration. They took away duties from the Secretary of State only because she's a Democrat, right? They took away duties from the Secretary of State and created the Department of Administration. And then Ducey appointed his favorite appointee, Andy Tobin, to be the head of the Department of Administration. And then the plan was to pass the lieutenant governor. Oh, all of a sudden the lieutenant governor is Andy Tobin and Ducey can go off to the Trump administration, but we didn't get it done that fast. And so, but they're still trying to do it. And it's cementing a line of succession. I mean, the Democratic Party might like this also because, you'll remember, back when Harry Reid was president of the Senate, he goes, oh, we can't get rid of the filibuster because when we're in power, we can make hay with the filibuster. So we can use it. So we shouldn't get rid of it. Well, that didn't work out well for us at all, did it? And so when there are bad ideas, we should just, not go along with bad ideas. I think that it makes it harder in some ways because you want to make sure that when you elect a governor, you also elect a really good Secretary of State like Adrian Fontes. I would love to have him as Secretary of State or governor someday, And so I think that they're both bad ideas, but I know not everybody agrees with me.
Pam, I wanted to ask you about just the quantity of propositions that the legislature put on the ballot. I think they originally put 8 on, and it's been winnowed down to some number fewer than that. But is the legislature intentionally trying to overwhelm voters? Because these voter guides that you get, they're like a telephone book, and when you get your ballot, it's going to be a yard long on both sides because of all propositions.
Right. It's kind of interesting because in order to prepare for the tag presentation, especially to sort out that SCR 1011 from Mesnard that enables Prop 130, I'm like, no, I remember that was complicated, and so I keep all my records on OneNote in the legislature. And so I went back to my OneNote from this past session and I searched for ballot referrals in my OneNote, and there is actually a lot of them that we heard that didn't get on the ballot. So 8 was a small number compared to what they tried to put on the ballot, but definitely, yeah, they things that they've wanted for a long time, like all these constitutional changes, they do pack the ballot, and everybody's got to turn the ballot over, and so it's a lot of it comes down to voter education. Slog through the ballot, turn it over, vote on everything, ask your friends if you're not sure, that sort of.
Yeah. Let's turn to Mike Bryan. Go right ahead, Mike.
Still not seeing any questions in the chat, but I do have one of my own. The ballot proposition, which is numbered 308 about resident aliens. The way you explained it sounded kind of like it was targeted at DACA students, but is that a correct impression, or is it all resident aliens?
I just lost my screen here. I believe it's all.
Yeah. Okay, I just wanted clarification on that, because it sat the way that you described it sounded like people who came here as a child. And I don't think that's a requirement of the law. It just overturns Prop 300 from a few years ago. Yeah.
Part of it, not all of it. Again, there's a better explanation on the YouTube channel because apparently that Prop 300 had a lot of other things in it about adult education and also childcare, and so it only gets rid of part of that old proposition.
Gotcha. All right. Yeah, and that was done by Paul Boyer, if I'm not mistaken. Who,
yes.
Yeah, got in trouble with his own party for things exactly like this.
Exactly like this. Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Pam.
I've got another question for you, Pam, on just the nature of all of the propositions. I see over and over that the legislature is doing everything it can to overturn, revoke, or prevent voter input. You know, for example, the Save Our Schools measure did not get on the ballot. And so there's going to be voucher expansion, which will completely gut our schools. And 2 years ago, voters overwhelmingly voted that down. So where is this coming from, this sort of anti-voter sentiment that's reflected in some of these propositions?
Well, they don't represent the majority.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, it's all about cementing their power. I mean, we see that every day up in the legislature. And when she was in office, Representative Say LeBlanc got a document, and I still have to get a copy of this. In fact, Blog for Arizona should get a copy of this. And it gives all of the rule changes that the Republican majority has made over the last like 20 or 30 years in the legislature. And it shows all the things that, you know, because things used to be more bipartisan there, you know, the committees didn't used to be packed with super majorities of Republicans. So no Democrat idea would ever get passed unless it was, you know, approved, you know, by the majority. And so it's all about their power, and they'll do whatever they can to keep it, in my opinion.
Okay, let's turn to Paul Stapleton Smith. Paul has a question. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, briefly, thank you, Pam Hannley, for all that you do. And Larry, you kind of took the wind out of my sails on my question, but I would ask Pam, Representative Pam Hannley, this. Some of the propositions, to your earlier point, did some of that just come out of legislative card trading during budget times from the legislature, where something was promised to be referred to the ballot? And if I may, specifically underscoring, what is that? The voucher expansion, what is that likely to do to our AEL? They killed our ballot proposition. So could you just kind of briefly explain what that sort of milieu was, please?
Yeah, that's a question that's better for somebody who's on the education committee than me. But yeah, it's a mess. I mean, the voucher expansion, and I don't know if you saw, there was a recent article last week about who's applied for the vouchers already, you know, because it, you know, it's open season already. And this article said that 75%, or actually, I guess the reporter was tipped off by a notice on Kathy Huffman's website, that 75% of the new voucher applications were from kids who were already in private school and already in Maricopa County. And it was overwhelmingly rich zip codes, you know, and so it's like, it's helping the rich folks. That's what we said it was going to do. And that's exactly what it's doing, you know? And so it's sad that that didn't get on the ballot, but you know, there's a lot of very worrisome things in the state of Arizona right now. The flat tax has been kicked in, which means we're going to be giving away our profits now for the state, you know, and so that's going to start public education. And then the water, you know, I mean, we're in dire straits here. Whoever gets to be governor is going to have a big job on their hands with what Ducey has left them in bad laws.
Yeah. Let's see. Craig Markin, go ahead and unmute and ask your question. Thank you.
Yes, if it were to pass, what would be the responsibilities of a lieutenant governor other than being a governor in waiting?
Well, they would take over that Department of Administration. So right now you have Andy Tobin. So they basically split the Secretary of State's job, you know, I don't know what, but by half in a way. And so, and it actually, part of the law that enabled it said something about, and we're going to look at this in 2 years. So it's like, there might be a Republican Secretary of State in 2 years, so we might change it then. And so, but yes, it would be the Department of Administration is what the lieutenant governor would oversee. And so I think that's like the statues in Wesley Bowen Plaza and the state capitol and some things like that. And I'm not sure, but whatever Andy Tobin's job now is as head of the Department of Administration would be the lieutenant governor's job. It's a job that didn't exist. They're creating more big government. They created another executive position that is unelected, you know, and it's something that we've done without for 100 years. And all of a sudden the Republicans want to create more government.
Thank you.
All right, let's turn to Steve Early. He has his hand up. Go right ahead, Steve.
mean accordion, Pamela. My question is when the Democrats take over the legislature, both houses, how easily or how can they overturn some of these laws that have been passed when it takes a 2/3 majority from what I remember?
It does take a 2/3 majority for the taxes. But you know, we see a precedent with the state of Kansas. And in fact, we fought like hell to stop the flat tax in the legislature and stalled it for a very long time. Representative Epstein and I, they used to call us Representative Powers Epstein, you know, it's like they combined us, you know, because we're women of a certain age. And anyway, we all talk about taxes all the time, but that the flat tax and things like that would take a 2/3 majority. But in the state of Kansas, they passed the flat tax, and it was so disastrous that they took it back on a bipartisan vote, and they had to have like a 2/3 majority also. So it has happened before. And then in the debates in the House, you know, Epstein and I used to bring up Kansas, you know, and Majority Leader Toma, you know, who has said in the Ways and Means Committee, everybody knows the best way to prosperity is lower taxes and deregulation. So he stands up and he says, stop talking about Kansas. This is the Arizona flat tax. Kansas passed the flat tax, but it didn't have the guts to cut the budget afterwards when their revenue went down. So that flat tax is going to bring budget cuts, and they are predicting it. And this is going to be really bad, and hopefully we'll be as smart as Kansas to get rid of it at some point in the future in the legislature, because it's going to help the rich and nobody else pretty much.
I've also got a question for you about the Stop Dirty Money proposition. I know Terry Goddard has been working for, I think this is the third effort to get signatures to put it on the ballot, and it's really something that needs to be approved. You know, nowadays you hear in particular newsletters that somebody's getting, you know, $13 million to support their candidacy, and you really don't know anything about them. What do you think the odds are of it being passed, and is there a significant opposition to the Stop Dark Money initiative?
Well, I really hope that they get it passed, but you know, again, it's an education thing, because a lot of people don't know what that means or what's going on. And I don't know, I mean, I'm sure, you know, groups like the Chamber of Commerce and utility companies and things like that are not for dirty money passing. And what's interesting is that, as I mentioned, Jim and I have put up a bunch of signs around town, and the other day when I was out there putting up the reproductive choice signs, you know, I was visiting my dirty money signs that I put up, and it's amazing how many dirty money signs are being vandalized or removed. So there's at least some subterfuge out there, you know, of people trying to destroy the message. But the Stop Dirty Money is really important, especially since we're a swing state and there's so many independent expenditures being spent in this state. I mean, you know, there was gobs of money in those the primary races, you know, and that's what got people like Blake Masters and Mark Fincham, and you know, and even like in the Secretary of State's race between Bolding and Fontes, there was a large amount of independent expenditures behind Bolding, but he didn't win. I mean, I think in some ways people see some of these mailers from the super PACs and they're like, I don't know, integrity pact, I don't know about that, you know. And so we really have to watch out and promote it. Like I said, I mean, politely, you know, press your opinions with your friends and family, but don't make any enemies, okay?
Yeah, I don't know about Bolding's independent expenditures being all that independent. I mean, he had a paper firewall, but he controlled the foundation that was given all that money. So,
well, there were he had a lot of other money from a lot of other groups too, though. So, and it was out of state money, you know, independent expenditures. It was, you know, dark money. There was dark money everywhere. I mean, Fincham, and like David Cook, you know, relatively moderate cowboy rancher guy from the middle of the state. He was the legislator with the most money spent for him and against him. because again, he's a moderate, and we can't have any more moderates,
Even more
Scary.
than Wendy Rogers, because I know she got an
And
avalanche.
in the House, she was in the Senate.
Ah, okay.
He was in the House.
All right, we've got a question from Edlin Smith. Please go ahead and unmute. Edlin is the founder of Marana Dems and Friends, a wonderful organization.
Edlin Silman. The dirty money doesn't go to the top. We had a Marana Town Council election. I was campaign manager for 2 of the men. We went to every single door we could, not just Democrats because we had the van, but also left-leaning. We had such wonderful, there is a town council, and they never knew it. We lost by 1 vote. We spent $20,000 in our campaign. They had a PAC. Nobody lived here. Up in, the developers, builders, money. They had $200,000, and we lost by 1%. With people that had just first put their foot in. We'll kill them next time, but dirty money doesn't just step the bottom up.
It doesn't always work. You're right. It doesn't always work. That's why I tell people when, candidates come to me and they say, oh, no, I just can't do it. I need more money. And I said, you know what? I ran clean every time. And you have to be frugal when you don't have a lot of money. But big money doesn't always work. When Freeze and I ran against Brendan Lyons, he had 3 times the amount of money that either of us had, and we still beat him.
All right, Pam, we are running low on time, and I wondered if you could bring our meeting to a close and sort of summarize the points that you made. Tell us where we can find out more information, and how can we follow you? If people want to hear your podcast, tell us where to find you.
Well, I'm still on Blog for Arizona, obviously, and I'm also still keeping up my powersforthepeople.net website, and that has all the connections to my Facebook page, my Twitter account, my podcast, A View from the Left Side, and so I've got a lot of information on there. Even though I'm retiring from the legislature, and I'm not going to go away. I'm still going to be causing trouble. And even if it's just putting up dirty money signs and reproductive choice signs on the street corner, I'm still going to be around. So as I said earlier, there's 10 propositions. 8 were put on the ballot by the legislature. 6 of the legislative ones are not so good in my opinion. 4 are okay. But really, I suggest, reading the other opinions, read the voter guide. A lot of times they're really fat because they have all these groups and other people who have written, why they oppose or support things. But again, look at who they're representing and things like that before you trust their opinions. Okay. But yeah, everybody's got to vote. Do whatever you can to volunteer also in the coming weeks, and make sure everybody's registered like ASAP.
Yeah, that's
Need all hands on deck, but you guys already know that.
Yeah, tomorrow's the last day you can register.
Yep.
So go online and do it if you haven't.
Well, Pam, where can we find out more about you, about your videos and your writing?
Powersforthepeople.net. That's the main place. Like I said, that's the connection hub. And it's all in there. I've been keeping it up. I have more things to post.
All right, well, I'm going to bring this meeting of Democrats of Greater Tucson to an end, and I want to express my gratitude to Pam Powers Hannley for clearly explaining all of the 10 propositions.